Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Aspiring Speakers Lightning Talks event. Let me introduce myself first of all. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Abby. I work with the Aspiring Speakers and approximately 15 other communities, all of which are free and run by RecWorks. RecWorks are a tech recruitment company, but with a massive difference. Obviously, as a company, we're always on the lookout for more clients, and some of our best clients have come from community members who recommended RecWorks to their internal talent team. So if you are hiring for a new team or you're working for a company that is, we would love to hear from you. If you'd like to know more about what sort of service we can offer, just ping me a message on LinkedIn or Slack. My name is as you see it on the screen, and we really look forward to having that conversation and working with you. So what's the difference, I hear you ask? Well, also, we really do believe that recruitment can be a force for good in the industry beyond just placing people in jobs. We have a particular focus on learning, mentoring, and personal development. If people want to learn and others want to teach or share their knowledge, we are more than happy to connect you through our communities and events. We see this as giving back to those we've worked with in the past, but also paying it forward to those we hope to work with in the future. Earlier this year, we made our 5,000th introduction through our Meet a Mentor community. We're really excited about that, and we're looking forward to making even more connections there. As I've already said, we do love to give opportunities for people to connect, and this event is part of that. If you'd like to know more about any of our communities, again, please get in touch with myself or Helen Lewis if you know her, and we can take it from there. Today's session is being recorded for you, and you will be able to find it on our YouTube channel. I will put the link to the channel in the chat for you, and there will be time between each speaker to have a couple of questions or comments if you think of anything. We'd love to have a bit of discussion. That's great. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first speaker today, which is Abhijit. Over to you.
Hello, thank you, Abby, and hello, everyone. So I'm a solution architect working with a large product company dedicated for the telephony softwares, mainly. Luckily, I've been part of a couple of satellite transformation projects where like the providers or the operators are the satellite companies, and they provide satellite communication to the end users and the different geostationary satellites to the Earth stations. So with that, let me give you some information about what exactly we are going to talk about. So satellite telephony is something which we might be using from around 20-25 years, indirectly, not directly. But we never thought about it, that what is going on in the background. So there are like tech-savvy people who are working, implementing a lot of things, deploying it, launching the satellites, and providing something to the end users on the Earth. But the users who are using it are unknown of it. Like, for example, your SOS signals, which we have seen everywhere in the world, like in the phone or in the telephone or in the fire stations, those are actually provided by the satellites. The communication for them is from the satellites. Then the TV, which we have the cables or TV, when we started seeing the broadcasted network, that was internally broadcasted by satellite once it moved to the global stage from the local stage. So there are many examples such that, and I'll provide you some details that how this industry works. Where is the expansion happening, and where are we heading to in let's say coming up 5 to 10 years. So I've just pasted the Wikipedia definition here for the communication in satellite. I think everyone can read it, so that's not a big deal. But I wanted to give some examples where we are currently using the satellite and never worried about it. One is our Google Maps. I think every one of us uses it. So if someone says that Apple has recently launched the satellite communication on their phones, I think it's not 100% true, because Apple Maps were using it indirectly in the phones. We use the assisted GPS satellite, AGPS, you might have heard about it. Then we have IoT devices connected everywhere. So it's not in UK particularly, but some of the countries are trying the IoT devices from energy meters for the large industry. So they can install the IoT devices and connect to satellite, give the real-time readings. Similarly, weather reports, we see it on television every day. I think we all know that those are something like specialized satellites launched to just collect the weather information. So there are many use cases. Now, the focus area which where I wanted to bring into is the telephony part of it, because now the telephones are not just the calls what we make, rather than that, it's more of a consumption of the data, how we use it. So let's move to the next slide. So what are the latest trends in satellite telephony? Um, so we, on a high level, I would not say these are the markets for satellite, but on a high level, these are the major markets for satellite: aviation, maritime, and land. So if you see, it covers most part of it. The other market, what we call in the satellite industries, are like enterprise, where the energy companies or the remote location where the dams are situated, the water reservoirs are there, or the oil refineries field. So they come as a part of different industry. But on the high level, I think 80% of traffic or 70% of traffic telephony on satellite comes from the maritime system currently. And maritime mainly, if we talk about maritime, it is nothing but the fishing boats, cruises, or the small ships which do the Channel Islands movement. Then if you see on the right hand side here, a small picture, you must have seen these domes on the ships, I'm pretty sure, and those are nothing but the terminals which are connecting to satellite. Now that is one use case for the users, where they can use data or browse data in the ships. But that's not the commercial use. The commercial use mainly comes from the safety services in maritime, where they get the latest information on the maps and the weather information, weather reports. And then on top of that, then comes the news and the movies and what and all. Now, land is something which is more on the industrial side. Oil refineries, like in Chad, a country in Africa, they've started installing the new oil refineries in desert, and there's no connectivity. So they pay a huge money to the satellite companies to provide the dedicated bandwidth for them. Then aviation is the most booming sector currently. You might have noticed in the flights, you get the WhatsApp connection or the data from the Wi-Fi within the flight, which is also called as in-flight connectivity. So these are the major use cases currently, and the latest trends in satellite telephony. Most booming one is the aviation. Most commercially beneficial is the maritime, and land is more for the people, where people get to use the satellite or the normal civilians are using the satellites. Army is another use case. When I say army, it's more like any type of army, like it's Navy or Air Force or Army. They are using satellites a lot. They even ask to launch their own satellites by the satellite providers. So they are pretty big use case. Now, where we are heading to. So from a future of satellite perspective, it's more like one is the aviation, where you are getting the bandwidth. You can connect to multiple devices in the flight. So there are a lot of use cases of it. We are working one by one, resolving them. There are consortiums as well, where if you have heard about the EAN, European Aviation Network, so they are tying up with the telephony companies and connecting both satellite and telephone at a level, so that you can get the seamless connectivity while in flight. It's in still progress. Then which excites me a lot is the mesh satellite connection. It's really a new thing. If you know about the mesh, you can have a seamless connectivity when you move around the earth. So a satellite terminal can become or act as a router for you. And when you move to and go near to the next router, it will become a connection provider for you. That is the next thing. And then the internet of the satellite. So one is that we are connecting to satellite, but there are now studies going on to connect the satellites to satellite and monitor their health, everyday health, and then providing the connectivity. Cost is the major factor with these, because satellite is expensive. When we pay a lot of money if we want to get a satellite phone. But I feel that in next 5 years, that will be very equivalent to the normal telephony. If not, our mobile bundles are getting cheaper. Yeah, this is just an example I've put in that how the mesh works in general. So if a ship is moving and one ship is connected to satellite, the another ship near it can get connected to the first ship. And if ship is moving and goes to a third ship, nearby third ship, then the third ship can provide the network to it. This is how the satellite networking is increasing. If they go near to shore, then they can connect to the land network, which is nothing but our 4G or 5G network. So the hybrid antennas are getting created, terminals are formed now, which can help in seamless connectivity. This can also, the next use case which is coming in future is secure network for the satellite oriented ships, where ship can form their own cluster and can become a tunnel for the network, and it becomes a secure network. Mainly used in the army and navy use cases where they do not want to interfere with the public network. So this was more or less a very high level background of how satellite works. Not sure if you knew about it, but I think this was something which I found interesting and thought to share with you all.
Excellent. Thank you, Abhijit. We have had a question in the chat. Early in your talk, you said the market is mostly white label. What do you mean by that? Can you expand a little on that?
So this is a very regulated market. When I say satellite, we do not have MVNO culture. If you know, MVNOs are, for example, Sky in UK gives a mobile network as well, but they do not have their own network as such. What they do is they buy the bandwidth from, let's say, O2 or Vodafone, and then give the network. Similarly, and that comes with the regulation, obviously, telephony regulations are applied there. Similarly, for satellites as well, we have satellite regulatory bodies, and that covers even the financial authorities as well, which is separate to the normal taxation authorities. The reason being, it is a global in nature, it's not countrywide. So every country has their own rules, but there is a global rule than for satellites. So in that sense, it is kind of more regulated than the normal world. You will have new things coming up like Starlink, OneWeb. SpaceX is launching a lot of satellites, like they have the capability to launch one every month, one every 10 days. And even the smallest countries like Saudi Arabia, they've launched their own satellite now. If you know about the ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization, they are the one providing the vehicle and launching 100 satellites in one trip. So this is all regulated by the international bodies now.
Excellent, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Abhijit before we move on? I'm going to take the silence as a no. So thank you so much, Abhijit. And next up, we have Jen. Over to you.
Thanks, Abby. And thankfully, I've managed to resolve my my tech issues with moments to spare. So I haven't had to try and deliver this from the wonder of an iPhone. Good afternoon, everybody. Lovely to see you all again. I think I really enjoy these sessions on a Friday and the diversity. So it's brilliant to follow satellite telephony with Spidey senses. I can't think of any other environments that we would get to do that. So anyhow, for those of you that don't know me, I am Jen Bauer. I am the country delivery lead for a consultancy that goes by the name of Persistent Systems. And I've come to talk to you today, like I said, about Spidey senses. And I'll tell you what I mean by that in a second. But more specifically, what I want to talk to you about is when we can use intuition as leaders. And that's not necessarily leaders with a capital L for those of us that have roles that are kind of organizational leaders or managers, but all of us in some aspects of our lives lead others on a day-to-day or a week-to-week basis in some capacity. So there's something for everybody from a leadership standpoint. What I'd like to kind of discuss is what intuition is and when it's specifically valuable. First of all, what is it? So when I'm talking about spidey senses, what I'm talking about is something slightly intangible that we can't completely define using facts or data points. You could describe it perhaps as a sixth sense or a gut feeling. But in this particular context, I think that's actually underselling it. And what we're talking about here is the ability to subconsciously process information in a timely manner. And in this particular context, it's not spidey senses. It's not like a gift from Marvel. It's recognizing that we are experts in our field in a particular area, and through expertise, through experience, we become super quick at processing the information that is being fired at us here, there, and everywhere. And that gives us an edge. It allows us to act quickly, and that's what we're going to talk about. And it's valuable not only in its own right, but alongside creativity, risk-taking, resilience, some of the other soft skills that you would think about in a leadership context. And like I said, it's a way of giving us an edge. I think I'd like to talk about three specific things and specific cases where I'd advocate intuition as a leader can play a part. The first is in making quick expert decisions in a messy environment. I'm sure some of us, if not all of us, have been involved in one of those projects. The sands are continually shifting. The client can't quite make up their mind about what they want. The data is a mess. There are all kinds of different factors that can feed into it. And in a lot of circumstances, the worst decision that you can make in this particular scenario is no decision at all. Sometimes the time taken to amass, to process, and to act on the myriad of data points that we've got will take longer than the time that we have available to make a decision. And in that case, that's when we rely on our intuition. And when we're relying on our intuition, like I've said, what we're relying on is years of experience, of exposure to similar circumstances, and in a similar way to learning to drive a car, and then you don't have to think then about every gear change that you make, freeing up more capacity to be able to look further ahead in your journey. In a similar sense, intuition plays a role in these messy environments. If you don't need to think about the gear change because you've changed gear 57,000 times already, you can move through the decision-making process more quickly. In a particular example that I've got, I was new to an organization, new to a piece of technology, came into a project mid-flight, and it had just failed to go live and had rolled back. The project manager had left unexpectedly, and the client was talking about cancelling the contract. I'm genuinely not surprised, but there wasn't time to do a ground up review of everything that had gone wrong, everything that we could do better, all of the data that we needed something then. And because I have made decisions in projects, because I have spoken to clients, because I have built teams. There's an element that is relying on the muscle memory, relying on the ability to change gear without thinking that it's time to be in third gear now, that allows you to work through those situations and move forward. Part of that, and distinctive to that in its own ways, is my second point. And that is, I rely on my intuition when I'm building relationships. And I say it's part of that because that example that I just gave you was about building relationships very quickly with a team of, with a project team in my own organization, building relationships very quickly with a client who was in an uncomfortable and unsatisfactory situation. And as a leader, I find it's important to lean into the relationship building, to start the process, to be willing to make the first move, to be open, to be slightly vulnerable. And it gives you an opportunity to get a feel with what will work with individuals, and whether or not they're clients, their team members, their peers, they're our own kind of superiors in an organization, they're people. And it comes down to building relationships. And back to the gear changing analogy, when you are driving your car through your relationship building, the more times you have built these relationships, the more times that you have solved a problem for a client or built a team, the easier it becomes to use muscle memory and to instinctively act to build or to strengthen those relationships. Recently, one of the teams in my organization had started work for a healthcare client, and they were doing good work. They were doing great work, but what they hadn't quite got was the voice of the customer. And when we were presenting back to the customer, things just weren't quite gelling. And my role, I came in and listened to the way we were talking to the customer, the way the customer was talking to us, and through intuition, using spidey senses, I had a feel for how the customer wanted to be spoken to. They didn't have to tell us how they wanted to be spoken to, and we don't need to be told how people like to be communicated with. It's something that you can pick up if you lean into that particular aspect of relationship building. It's similar with pre-sales. You don't get a particularly long time to get to know a client before you have to tell them what they need and what you can offer them. And there are lots of organizations at the same time competing for the same work. So a strength is being able to identify what you can do differently or what you can do that is specific to them. And as pre-sales leaders, as creators of these proposals, if we have got an instinctive, an intuitive grasp for what the client wants over and above the bare facts that they tell us, if we've got an intuitive grasp of what their communication style is and how they prefer to be heard and be spoken to, it's a way of giving ourselves an edge over our competitors. And it's something that doesn't appear in the data. It doesn't appear in the pack that they send over with a part of a request for information or a request for proposal. It's something that you read between the lines, that you see around the edges. So whether or not it's kind of being a quick expert in a messy environment, or it's building relationships with a new team or with a new customer, they're both examples of when I'd suggest that we can rely on our intuition as leaders. And then the third one is to give greater insight and greater flexibility. When we need to pay attention to the feeling that something is off, or when we need to trust our own ability to do more than we already know. So linked to the earlier point, we need things to pass the straight face test as leaders, because I work with a team full of experts. They're far more experienced, far more skilled at a massively diverse range of activities than I possess the skills and experience for. But I need to know that what they're saying is right. I need to trust them, of course. I need to have made sure that I have recruited or built a team based on the right level of skills and experience. But on top of that, there's a level of intuition that wraps around it. When people come and they're telling me about their ideas, or they're telling me about their proposals, and I'm not an expert, there's something that I can rely on based on listening to lots of proposals, based on listening to lots of experts, that is passing the straight face test. And it means that we can move forward more quickly. We can give ourselves as a team an edge. I can give myself as a leader an edge. I can help that individual to have an edge, to be more efficient, more effective, because it passes the straight face test. And it's something intangible that needs practice and experience over time, and we need to allow ourselves, trust ourselves to kind of lean into that. And related, I guess, as well, that's about me passing, or that's about other people communicating with me, and me using intuition to work out whether or not I'm comfortable that their message hangs together. There's the other side of the coin, to give greater insight, but also to give greater flexibility. And what I mean by that, I think, is really to have comfort in flying by the seat of your pants. Not every time, not every day. Nobody wants nobody wants to be in a team with that one person that bases absolutely nothing on skills or experience or facts, that is just some kind of bandit flying around with nothing under the covers. I'm not suggesting that's the case at all, but it's easier to be uncomfortable in new situations when you've got other skills to fall back on besides pure facts and pure knowledge. Knowing that it's something that you're going to get to feel comfortable in, knowing that you've got kind of an intrinsic set of or an intrinsic idea of the truth, so that you'll not be swayed away from being you, whilst you're temporarily being more flexible than you could potentially cope with on a day-to-day basis. And I appreciate that it all sounds on one level, particularly when I'm potentially talking to a bunch of people from the tech industry, which is so driven, as it needs to be, by science, by technology, by facts. But as leaders, we've got two facets to our roles. We are leaders, and there's a science to the way we lead, and that's underpinned by the data, by the knowledge, by the skills. But there's also an art to how we lead, and that's what I'm talking about today. So I'm challenging you all in the tech industry, especially, to go away and look at not only how you're being scientists in your leadership, but I'm challenging you to work out where you can be artists in your leadership as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Wonderful. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Jen before we continue? Yeah, go for it, Alex.
Hiya. Thanks, Jen. Very interesting talk. I mean, I noticed. I totally agree. You should consider your intuition, particularly when you don't have the time to fully investigate something. That makes loads of sense. Would you feel there are any situations where you shouldn't use your intuition? How do you decide when is the right time?
I don't think it's a case of using your intuition or not using your intuition. I think it's, depending on the circumstances, more of the decision making may lean towards intuition. So if you've got beautifully presented fact-based analysis, that there's no sensible reason that I would advocate for not relying on the facts that are in front of you, assuming that they're from a trustworthy source and, you know, all of that kind of. But if you haven't got the facts, or the facts are grey, or the facts are too vast for the time, then back to the point, the worst decision is no decision. And you pick the best that you can come up with and you move forward. And if it doesn't work, you fail fast and move in a different direction. But it's far, far better than standing still. There's no chance of progressing in that case.
I suppose you also consider the fact of, if I make this decision, then it's going to cost me this amount or this resources, and we can cope with that. And, you know, even if it's the wrong decision, we can cope with that.
Definitely working within parameters and working, you know, within your own remit. I know where the boundaries of my responsibility lie, and however strongly my spidey senses might tingle, you know, there's not going to be much that I can do about making decisions, you know, outside of my own particular remit. So
cool.
I think constraining it sensibly rather than letting it run amok. Maybe that's the way forward.
I do like the spidey sense analogy, and I actually used it in a blog some years ago, which I'm going to stick into the chat.
Oh, cool.
So people could look at that later. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Jen. So next up, we have Ishai. Over to you.
Yes, hi, hello. My name is Ishai. I'm product manager at Bolt, and I'm here to talk to you about this guy. But I'm going to do it through the perspective of also of myself. And through the story of how I got from architecture into product management. So this guy was a Roman architect. He lived in the 1st century BC, and he wrote a very famous book called De Architectura, which is the only book that we have on the subject left from Roman times. Through manuscripts copied and kept in monasteries throughout the years. And this guy's name is Vitruvius. So what does he say? And that actually connects quite well to Jen's talk. It's an art and a science. So architecture is an art and a science, both practice and theory. And so it involves the intent and the execution. And then he goes on to talk about what education architects need. So an architect needs to be a good writer, a skillful draftsman, versed in geometry and optics, expert on figures, acquainted with history, informed in the principles of nature and moral philosophy, somewhat of a musician, not ignorant of science, both of law and physics, nor the motions law and the relations to each other, and of the heavenly bodies. Quite a lot. And that's me starting my architectural education according to this. But that sounds quite a lot. So he goes on and caveats that he basically says you need to be this jack of all trades. But he says, yeah, you can't be a master of all of them. So you're the master of none. Another aspect of what he's writing about is this sense of proportion and how the beauty of a building is related to the human form and the human proportions. And he talks about how a part of our from your chin to the top of your forehead is 1/10 of the height of your whole body, and all these proportions and how the Roman architecture is built on top of these mathematical proportions. And so I worked as an architect. I designed this building. I'm not saying it's neoclassicist or anything. It's not, but it has it follows some proportions. But let's get back to Vitruvius for a second. After the Roman times, he was kind of forgotten during medieval times, and then was rediscovered in the 14th century by this guy, Leon Battista Alberti. He was an architect and an artist and some other things. And he kind of rekindled the interest in Vitruvius. And that was the core of what got the concept of the Renaissance man, the homo universalis that the Renaissance was all about. And 2000 years later, I moved to London to start a new career, basically. So if we go back to that idea of the human body shape and the proportions, and being this person that has all these types of education, and that concept of the Renaissance men, you might be familiar with this drawing by Da Vinci, which is called the Vitruvian Man, which kind of signifies basically all of what we talked about so far, which is the proportion, the human centrality, and being this multi-faceted human that touches multiple things. And that brings us back to just another famous part of Vitruvius' writings, which is the Vitruvian triad, the utilitas, firmitas, and venustas. These are the strength, the utility, and beauty. And as I said, this is the second half of this of my career in product management. It's common to say that product managers sit in the center of the Venn diagram of business, technology, and design. So technology is the strength, the stability of the product. The utility it's the use case, it's the business need, and the beauty is the ease of use, the design. And just in case I haven't covered why architects make good product managers through my own story and through Vitruvius' story, I also asked ChatGPT to give me an answer. And it says that, well, architects are trained in design thinking. They have a good attention to detail. They are well-versed with cross-functional collaboration, and, well, I'm not very strong at this one, but have some project management skills. Yeah, so that's overall. I hope that you enjoyed, and got to keep evolving.
That's great, Ishai. Thank you so much. That was really interesting. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Jen, you've unmuted. Go for it.
I was just going to ask if you had a favorite that you've ever architected versus a favorite kind of product, and whether or not, there was a link there.
So I think both professions are about having a great vision, but then also a great ability to compromise. But the biggest difference is that in architecture that you do not get to iterate, and the whole process is super slow. I feel like with architecture, like, because there's a lot more time and a lot more compromise along the way, and then like, I see the flaws in all the things I built, more than others, I think. Well, if you look at that building, like, it took 9 years, and yeah, that doesn't include all of it, but yeah, 9 years. So that's and I see tons of flaws there in that picture, and I'm sure that most of you don't. So it's harder with architecture. You're more critical, I think. With software and product, it's easier because, like, you first of all, you can measure the feedback, and yeah, I don't know. That's like, I'm proud of most of the things I've done.
That's great.
I have a question, Isley. I was just wondering, what made you change careers? I.e., why did you change from being an architect to product manager in tech? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I get this question a lot, and I actually ask that whenever I find a fellow product manager who's ex-architect, and there are a few of us, I ask the question as well. So one, I like money.
Okay.
Two, I kind of touched that already. The slow process and the lack of ability to iterate. Like in interior design, you can get something within months. With buildings, you can get something in a matter of years. I worked a lot in buildings, and in urban design, there it gets to decades. Like a neighborhood I planned 15 years ago is only starting to get built like now, and it doesn't look anything like what, because it's urban design. You just do the guidelines, and so that's, I think. And also I think the last bit maybe is around, I didn't feel that architecture had enough of that technical, the tech flair that I'm interested in, because I'm kind of the art and the science. And yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool, thanks. I was just curious, but yeah, that's a really good answer. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So with no further ado then, our final speaker for today is BC. Over to you, BC.
Hi, everybody. Unfortunately, just like Jen, I joined the meeting with my laptop, and for some reason, it just gave me a shocker. So I'm joining from my mobile phone. Interesting. Okay, great. Everybody. My name is BC Josh Valade, and it's actually great to hear Ishi. I hope I pronounced that well. I'm not sure. Talk about product management and product management in comparison with architecture or an architect. My talk is something similar because I got really interested recently in a role that I got to find out pretty new in product development, in software development lifecycle, and in the technical space, and that is developer relations. So I'll be talking about product management, and developer relations. It's two sides of a coin, really. And the first want to say is, hi, I'm a tech professional who has had my background. My background has been in business analysis, in product development and product management. And so over the years, I've had different experiences and taken up different roles in that space. And when I got to know about developer relations, I found interesting. What exactly is developer relations? What does it mean? What's this new role in tech? What does it entail? Who works or who's fit for a developer relations role? And that raised my curiosity, and I tried to do some research to find out, the similarities and the differences between these two roles, and also inspired, lightning topics. So I'll be sharing the similarities I found in these roles, the differences, and I'll be concluding with what my view and my perspective of both of them. So a product developer or a product manager is someone who is involved in the process of ideation, conceptualization, who manages the entire flow of software development down to the go-to-market or the launch phase. And the product manager is someone who knows who has a deep understanding of the product, who actually drives the product, who knows the why, knows the pain points of the users, of the customers, and has a deep understanding of why a product or a service is being built in the first place and what the company is to achieve with it. On the flip side, a developer relations person, from my research, is someone who is involved in the strategies, that ensures that there is a mutually beneficial relationship between the software developers and an organization that delivers products or services that the software developers actually consume or use in their work and in their tasks. So, looking at these two broad, into these roles, I decided to look at what are the similarities, what do they have in common. So a product manager has the user in mind and desires to give value to the user. In the same vein, a developer relations person has the user in mind. The user in mind now refers to the software developers, those who use a particular product or use a particular service for their day-to-day roles and their day-to-day activities. Another similarity that I found is they both need to have good communication and collaboration skills. So as a product manager or in product management, there is need to actually interact with cross-functional teams, get to speak with users, get to speak with the marketers, get to speak with sales, get to speak with the experience, get to speak with design, get to speak with a whole lot of cross-functional teams. And it's that there is that good communication and collaboration skill. Same likewise for a developer relations, someone in a developer relations role. The person must have good communication and collaboration skill, because such person will be speak with different developers from different from different perspectives, from different races, different backgrounds, different views, and also it's key to have also a good collaboration and communication skills. So they should both have this. Another difference, or rather another similarity between these two is they both represent the interest of the user. So as a product manager to the company, you represent the voice of the customer, because the customers typically would have given feedback, and then that feedback you then have to analyze, prioritize as necessary, and also weighing in terms of whatever issues there may be. And in the long run, you are the voice of the user to the company. Also, the users see a product manager as the voice of the company. Now, so a product manager sits in between the two categories as the users and then the company, and represent their interests. Same for a developer relations role. I found out that a developer relations represents the developers to the company, gets feedback from the developers and shares with the company, and also to the company, to the software developers. Actually, a developer relations person also represents the company, gives the feedback from the company to the software developers. So they both, align in this regard. They both represent the users to the company, and then also represent the company to the users. So they have this similarity. One other thing I found out in terms of similarities is they both have, or they both need to have, a very good and deep understanding of the product or of the service. What service is being built, in product management, a product manager must have a deep sense of, understanding of what it is, and be able to communicate the mission, the vision, and all, to stakeholders. Same for a developer relations person, must have a good understanding of what the product is, of what the service is, because from time to time we need to communicate with the software developers, even sometimes put in some codes, help out with issues, help out with with issues and clarification when necessary. So these are the similarities I found out. I also found out some differences. So in terms of the user base, while a product manager's user base is all-encompassing, and it's not fixed to a particular set of people, a developer relations user focus is software developers, only software developers. And what they intend to do is to ensure that the software developers get value from the product and the service they're using. Another difference between them is they also involve, while a product manager has to do with all activities that culminate into the launch, a developer relations person takes it up from the launch phase, post-launch, handles all post-launch issues, all post-launch communications, get feedback from the software developers, and pass it on to the engineering team, to the product team, and then it then goes on again in the entire life cycle again goes into play. So another difference between them is while a product manager oversees what happens at the ideation phase, conceptualization phase, is involved in the minimum viable product or minimum viable service, is also able to oversee quality assurance and all the processes that culminate into the launch. A developer relations person actually is required to wade into three ways: code, content, and community. So in terms of code, a developer relations person has to be able to put in some time in coding, must be able to relate with the developers when it comes to their coding requests and their coding concerns, must also be able to develop content, blogs, posts, LinkedIn posts, social media posts. You must be able to develop content. Likewise, community. A developer relations person has to have a good grasp of community, be able to communicate with the community, get ideas with the community, share ideas, get feedback from them, relate with whatever pain points they have, and get back to the company with all that feedback. So a product manager and a software developer relations person, they have this difference, between them. Then lastly, in terms of the difference, they also, they have more users. The product manager oversees more users. I think I've mentioned that before. They oversee more users compared to the developer relations role, who's focused on just software developers. So based on this information I got, and based on the feedback in terms of the similarities and the differences, I'm of the opinion that a product manager and in product management, what is done and the tasks being done in that cycle is related to what is done in the developer relations cycle, meaning they have a lot of similarities. And while they actually have some form of collaboration between them is required for any company to succeed. You know, a developer role, a developer relations role can somewhat fit into a product manager role, you know, comfortably, because the basis and the foundation are kind of similar. The objectives are similar. The approach may be different, but the objectives and the aims are similar. But for a product manager role, into the product manager fitting into a software developer role will take a little bit of upskilling, because there has to be some content development, you know, content development is required, writing blogs, putting posts regarding the product, you know, running through a whole lot of this community activities for them will need to be required, or will be required, by a product manager who wants to take up a developer relations role. So in a nutshell, it's two sides of a coin, and they fit together, they work together, and collaboration is what makes, between these two roles, is what makes for success in an organization, you know, that has them. So thank you very much.
Thanks, BC. That was great. Does anybody have any questions or comments before I bring us to a close? I'm going to take that as a no. So all that's left for me to do is to say thank you to our 4 speakers for today. That's Abhijit, Jen, Ishai and BC. It's been great to hear from each of you, and we'd love to hear from you again. And thank you to everybody who's joined us for today's session. And if you're watching back on the recording, we hope you've really enjoyed the talks and the discussion after as well. So I look forward to seeing you all soon, and have a great bank holiday weekend. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.